Imagine walking into a grocery store, expecting prices to finally go down because everyone keeps saying inflation is cooling. But instead, your cart costs more than last week. Sounds familiar, right? This paradox has left millions scratching their heads. How can inflation be falling, yet the cost of essentials keeps climbing? The answer might shock you, and it starts with how we measure money itself. Welcome to Meta Finance Lab, where you can get more informative videos related to finance. You can subscribe to the channel for timely updates. To understand why prices keep rising, we need to go back in history to the 1970s. That was a period when inflation hit double digits in the United States, fueled by oil shocks and loose monetary policies. Economists warned that runaway inflation would destroy purchasing power, yet the solutions they tried back then created lessons we are still living with today. One key figure during this era was Paul Volcker, who would later become the Fed chair and dramatically raise interest rates to tame inflation. But here's the twist: his actions solved one problem but created another, setting the stage for the modern financial puzzles we face today. Fast forward to the early 2000s, the economy was recovering from a recession, and central banks around the world embraced a policy of low interest rates. This was meant to encourage spending and investment. On paper, it worked. Economies grew, stock markets boomed, and unemployment fell. But here's where things get tricky. Those low rates also meant money was cheaper to borrow, which encouraged people and businesses to take on more debt. And when debt rises faster than productivity, prices of goods and services can start creeping up even if headline inflation indicators appear stable. Now, let's talk about inflation itself. Most people think of it as a simple measure of price increases, but the reality is far more complex. Inflation is typically measured by the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, which tracks a basket of goods and services. But here's the catch: not everything in your daily life is represented equally. Rent, healthcare, groceries, and gasoline weigh differently in CPI calculations than they do in your personal budget. So while CPI might suggest inflation is falling, your personal cost of living can feel like it's climbing relentlessly. Here's a simple analogy. Imagine you re-looking at the average temperature in a country. It might be 70 degrees overall, but if you're in a desert experiencing 100-degree heat, the average doesn't matter to you. The same principle applies to inflation. Your experience of rising prices may diverge from the official numbers. Another hidden factor is supply chain disruptions. In the last few years, global supply chains have faced unprecedented shocks, from the pandemic to geopolitical conflicts. Even if inflation at a national level slows, bottlenecks in key sectors can drive specific prices higher. So, your grocery bills, utility costs, or gas prices may spike independently of headline inflation. This creates a disconnect between what you feel in your wallet and what the government reports. But it doesn't stop there. Companies themselves respond strategically to even small inflation changes. Many large corporations adjust prices preemptively to protect profit margins, a practice called forward pricing. This means they might raise prices before the costs actually increase, anticipating future inflation or supply shortages. It's like a chain reaction that keeps prices moving upward, even when economic indicators suggest a slowdown. Let's pause for a moment. You might be thinking, wait, so inflation is falling on paper, but my expenses are rising because of hidden factors. Exactly. And the most surprising part is that these hidden factors are often invisible to the public until it is too late. Consider housing, one of the largest expenses for most Americans. Rent has been rising faster than CPI for years. Why? Interest rates, local housing shortages, and property investment trends create localized price pressures. Even if mortgage rates climb, landlords often pass on costs to tenants, resulting in continuous rent hikes. This is a clear example of how aggregate statistics can mask personal financial realities. Transportation costs offer another revealing example. Gas prices are influenced by crude oil markets, geopolitical tensions, and refinery capacities. Even if the CPI for energy stabilizes, short-term spikes in oil prices can translate into immediate higher costs for consumers. And here's the kicker: these spikes are often amplified by investor speculation in commodity markets, further decoupling actual experience from inflation reports. Food is no exception. Global supply disruptions, climate events, and agricultural costs can cause grocery prices to rise independently of headline inflation. In 2023, for instance, bad weather in major wheat-producing countries drove bread prices up in multiple regions even though the overall CPI growth had slowed. These examples show that inflation is not a single number, but a dynamic, complex system influenced by countless variables. And here's something that surprises many. Your perception of rising prices is also psychological. Behavioral economists have found that people notice food and energy costs more than electronics or apparel. This means your personal inflation experience can feel higher than what statistics suggest, creating a sense of financial pressure that is real, even if macroeconomic numbers say otherwise. Debt and credit trends also play a hidden role. When people take on more debt during periods of low interest rates, it fuels demand. Increased demand drives prices up, even if the economy isn't technically inflating overall. This is why economists often say inflation is as much about demand as it is about supply. Let's talk about wage growth. Even if prices rise, wages often lag behind, meaning real purchasing power declines. Companies may raise prices due to higher labor costs, but if wages don't keep pace, consumers end up feeling the squeeze. This slow-motion tug-of-war between wages and prices is one reason many Americans feel financial stress, even in periods of low inflation. Here's an interesting twist. Government policies intended to curb inflation can sometimes have counterintuitive effects. Subsidies, tariffs, or tax changes may temporarily stabilize certain prices while unintentionally pushing others higher. For example, a government subsidy on energy may lower utility bills but increase the cost of related services like transportation, logistics, or manufacturing inputs. Another factor is global interconnectedness. Prices in your local market are increasingly influenced by events halfway around the world. Oil shocks, shipping delays, or currency fluctuations abroad can cause immediate changes in domestic prices. This globalization of inflation means that even if local economic conditions are stable, external shocks can create unexpected upward pressure. Let's not forget technology. While tech innovation often lowers costs in electronics and services, it can paradoxically increase costs elsewhere. For instance, as automation reduces labor needs in one sector, displaced workers may face higher living costs elsewhere, indirectly influencing overall prices. Financial markets themselves are an influential player. Asset inflation, rising home values, stock markets, and investments can spill over into the real economy. Investors and companies adjust pricing strategies based on expected returns, creating additional upward pressure on goods and services. We also see interesting patterns when comparing historical cycles. Every time inflation appeared to be under control, underlying structural issues like housing shortages or energy dependency re-emerged years later. This shows that temporary drops in headline inflation may mask long-term trends that continue to push costs upward. Now, here is the big picture takeaway. The disconnect between CPI and your personal experience of inflation is not a bug, it is a feature of a complex, modern economy. Governments, central banks, and corporations are all measuring and responding differently than the average consumer. So, what can you do? First, understand that headline inflation is just one measure. Track your personal spending to see your real inflation. Second, focus on essential costs like food, housing, and energy. These are often the biggest drivers of your monthly budget. Third, be strategic with debt and savings, recognizing that low-interest periods are temporary, and prices will continue to fluctuate. Think about this, even as inflation reports indicate a slowdown, your personal cost of living may keep rising due to supply constraints, corporate pricing strategies, and global factors. This is why so many people feel the pinch despite optimistic headlines. History tells us that ignoring these hidden dynamics can be costly. In the 1970s and 1980s, families faced persistent price increases despite official statements suggesting stabilization. Those who understood the underlying trends, diversified expenses, and invested wisely weathered the storm much better than those who relied solely on headline numbers. Looking forward, we must remain vigilant. Inflation reporting will continue to evolve, global supply chains will remain vulnerable, and prices for essentials will fluctuate unpredictably. Understanding these dynamics empowers you to make informed financial decisions rather than reacting emotionally to news headlines. Here are 3 clear takeaways. First, headline inflation does not always reflect your personal cost of living. Second, supply chain, corporate strategies, and global events have significant impacts on prices. Third, being proactive in budgeting, debt management, and spending awareness is essential to navigate rising costs. As a warning, remember that even temporary price drops may not indicate long-term relief. Economic systems are interconnected, and hidden pressures can re-emerge unexpectedly. Keep tracking trends, anticipate shifts, and never assume stability is permanent. In summary, prices can keep rising even when inflation falls because the numbers you see don't always match your reality. Supply constraints, forward pricing, global shocks, and psychological perception all combine to create the paradox you experience every month. Understanding these hidden factors gives you the insight to plan smarter and protect your financial well-being. Meta Finance Lab brings you useful knowledge and insights to help you understand the world of finance. Subscribe to stay informed and share with others who need this information.